Well, hello, and thank you for tuning in today. I had a poll on Instagram about what kind of makeup tutorial you guys would want to see, and most of you voted for the whole enchilada, so here it goes. I'll try to speed up the portions that I can, and I'll take you step by step through what I would do for like a full face of makeup. This isn't necessarily what I do every single day, and I'll show that to you guys soon as well. But just wanted to give you some tips and tricks for what I do, what brushes I like, what makeup I like. And so let's get started. I've got a clean face right now, and so basically how we're going to get ready to put on makeup, start with a primer. So I've been loving this Tula Brighten Up primer, and I also love the Ulta Beauty Mattifying Primer, especially in the summer months. I start to get a little shiny. I'm a little bit shiny already, but today I'm going to use the Tula. Just going to take a small amount on my finger. Warm it up. And then you'll want to work this in to all areas of the face. And if you're not already using a makeup primer before you apply your foundation or anything, you really should be, because it really helps your foundation apply smoother, helps your makeup last longer throughout the day. Kind of press it in. And I really do love that Tula primer, especially in the mornings when I'm not quite as awake. It really kind of helps to wake up your face a little bit. So normally after I apply primer, I like to let it sit on my skin for a couple minutes, really soak in. So I give it about 2 minutes, and then I will go into my foundation. Okay, now that we've let that primer sink in just a little bit, now I'll usually do my foundation. Today I'm going to be wearing the Too Faced Born This Way. I love this foundation. I would say it's medium coverage. You can definitely apply it on the heavier side and make it more full. I usually just go for medium. Kind of just work it in everywhere I need to. Off my fingers. And then usually I'll either apply this with a damp beauty blender or I'll use a foundation brush. Today I'll use the brush, and this is an Ulta Beauty buffing foundation brush. I like these brushes much more than a flat foundation brush. I feel like this helps really get it more evenly applied. So I kind of just start by getting it all over the area first, and then I'll work at blending it in more evenly. And so make sure I've got it everywhere I want it. Take it down your neck a little bit, which in case you aren't aware, this is a dermatology scar. And unfortunately, I'm starting to get a little bit tanner, so this color is still a little bit light for me. I need to go to Ulta and get myself a new color, but I was waiting until I could actually go in store and try them on. So that's about where I like it. And now we're going to work on concealer. So for concealer, I'm going to be using Tarte Shape Tape, and I usually utilize one color, if not two, depends on what kind of issues I'm dealing with that day. For under eye, I'm going to be using the shade Light Neutral. So it usually comes out with too much product on it, so I always wipe it off. Just dab that on where I need it. And then for any blemishes or anything, I use the shade Light Medium right now. And then I'll apply this to the bridge of my nose. Kind of use it as almost kind of a highlight. And then for this, I go in with a damp beauty blender and blend it out. So I have rosacea, and sometimes my nose carries more redness than other days. So that's why I generally put concealer on around my nose. And make sure you take your under eye and blend it down a little bit in a V shape. That way you don't have too harsh of a line right underneath that under eye area. Okay, so I'll say, like to start with eyes first. I generally do my foundation first, and that's because I usually set a pretty heavy under eye powder, and that way if I have any fallout from my eyeshadow application, I can always dust it off later. But I'm going to add in an extra step. I played around with whether to start applying my contour right following foundation. That usually turns out for more of a harsh, not as subtle of a contour. So if that's what you're going for, that's when you can work into some of your contour. But for today, I'm just kind of keeping it subtle. But I am going to use some of the Tarte Shape Tape Glow Wand. And I like to put this underneath my powder, that way it's not too jarring. And I'm just going to highlight where I would normally apply highlighter. And this looks really pretty underneath your setting powder. And same as before, just use a damp beauty blender. And highlighting that upper lip area helps your lips look fuller. So obviously if you're a person that likes to look real glowy, you could go nuts with that product. I like a little bit of glow, but not too much. Okay, so now is when I would usually go in and start using my setting powder. If your under eye isn't quite as corrected enough as you would normally want it, that's when you could definitely go in and fix that. Okay, so now we're ready for setting powder, and I'm going to be using two different powders today. One specifically is a setting powder. It's the IT Bye Bye Pores, and I'm using the pressed version. I usually prefer the loose version, but this was all I could get at the time. I generally will apply my powders with a big powder fluffy brush, and then a little bitty setting brush that I use underneath my eyes. And you can also even use a damp beauty blender to help press in that setting powder to areas that usually get a little oilier. So you just pick up some of the powder on that beauty blender, and then you press it into those areas. So I generally will get a little oily by the afternoon along my nose, definitely in that T-zone area. So I'm just going to press that in there a little bit. Okay. Then I'm going to take the little brush, pick up some of that powder. And I'm not going to go too crazy. Okay, so of course my camera died right in the middle of doing this, because that makes sense. The battery went like that. So I finished my powder application with that Revlon Photo Ready powder, and I took it down my neck just a little bit. You don't want your makeup to completely stop right at the jawline. That's not pretty. Take it down the neck. Okay, so normally now is when I would begin my eyes. I will start by using a MAC paint pot in the shade Painterly. I love this for eyeshadow base. I feel like this kind of grips my eye makeup better than most kind of setting products. A lot of women like to use foundation and find that grips well on their eyelids. It sometimes can just be a little cakey, and if you have more wrinkly or kind of a crepey eyelid, sometimes that will cling worse. I'm just using a flat, this is technically a concealer brush from Ulta Beauty, to apply that nice and evenly all over my lid. So for today's eyeshadow look, I'm just kind of going with like a basic eye, nothing too crazy. But I will be working primarily with the Tarte Under the Sea Volume 2, Reinforced of the Sea, I'm sorry, Volume 2 palette. I love this palette. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love these colors. I had linked this recently. And I will be mainly using just a fluffy eyeshadow brush, and then I love this crease brush from Sonia Kashuk. Love this brush. So I'm going to begin by taking the lighter colors and I'm going to use that to highlight my brow bone. And then I'm also going to use that on the inner corners of my eyes. I'm going to sweep it up. Helps make your eyes look a little bit brighter. And then, just because I want to give it a little bit of a more rosy hue, I'm going to go in with my favorite Naked 3 palette. And I'm going to add just a little bit of pink to my lid. I'm probably going to use this shade Limit. It's one of my favorites. It's a matte color. I usually apply a mixture of matte and some shimmer tones when I do eyeshadow. I don't do all over shimmer. It makes you look a little too frosty, especially if you're having photos taken. But then all matte to me just, you need a little razzle dazzle. And I love this Naked 3 palette. Especially right now, what kind of rosier eyeshadow colors are really having a big moment. And they're flattering on like pretty much every single eye color. Okay, so I've got my lid done. So now we're going to start going into the crease area. I'm going to use this crease brush, go back to my Tarte, and we're going to kind of work with these two colors here, Marina and Seaside. They're kind of taupier browns. I'm going to start from the outer corner, kind of pucker it in there a little bit. And then since this brush is nice and fluffy, you can also use it in a sweeping motion to try to really get it into that crease area. And if you slightly squint, then you can really see where your crease is. And I do have a larger area than most women's eyes from my crease to my brow bone, so generally I do take it up a little bit higher. So if you have kind of a larger eyelid area like I do, I take it just a little bit up there. That way there's not so much dead space above my crease. And this isn't like a harsh cut crease by any means. I'm just kind of going for a soft, rosy eyeshadow look. Okay, so that looks good. Except I normally find by the time I'm done with my eyeshadow and I put on eyeliner, I wish I still had a little bit more on. So I'm going to go to the Naked 3. Oops. Just put a little bit more in my crease. I'm going to use this really pretty brown shade called Factory. I'm just going to smush that in there a little bit more. Yeah, that's pretty. See, that's a little bit harsh right there, but we're going to blend it out. That's what I'm talking about. That looks good. So I'm just kind of sweeping it in there. We're going to work it out. We're not going too far outside the edge of the eye. Try to keep it clean. Perfect. Okay, so now is when I would generally take that small powder brush that I was using earlier and kind of sweep away. Make sure I didn't have any excess that fell down. If I did, you can always go in with that setting powder again. Try to clean up your lines. But generally, using that MAC paint pot, I don't have a lot of fallout. It pretty much grips anything that you put on your eyelids. So for eyeliner, I'm going to be using the Urban Decay Glide On Eye Pencil, the 24/7 in the shade Demolition. This is my favorite eyeliner and I love this. It's kind of a smoky blackish brown color and it looks great. So I'm going to get underneath the lash line. Try to get that waterline. And then I'm going to have to do this with 2 hands. And then usually, to apply my eyeliner, I pull the inner corner of my eye slightly out. That way I can get there right and tight to the lash line. Okay, and then if that didn't look as perfect as you want it to be, that's fine. Because I always go in on top of my eyeliner, and I'm going to use a slant brush, and I'm going to put powder on top of it. So I'm going to use that Tarte Rainforest of the Sea, and the darkest shade that comes in it is this really dark brown called Siren. And so you're just going to dampen that slant brush slightly, pick up some of the powder with it, the eyeshadow, and then you're going to smudge that in there. And doing this creates a much softer, not quite as bold eyeliner look. Now obviously there are certain occasions where I want that, you know, harsh eyeliner, and usually that's when I would go for a liquid. But just generally every day. Okay. So that looks good to me. Up the areas I don't like exactly how they look. And then you can either go straight into your mascara. I generally save that for last. Usually I'll go into my eyebrow area now, which if you don't clean off your eyebrows before applying any product to them after foundation, you need to. So I usually just take a Q-tip. I'm going to clean out any product that may have gotten in those eyebrow hairs. Yeah, you always have product on there. Okay, so for eyebrows, I usually apply 2 products. My eyebrows are naturally kind of thin. I tint them myself, and I'm actually like a week or so away from tinting them again. So usually I'll use this Brow Stylist Definer Pencil from L'Oreal. I love this because it's a very fine tip, very precise. But when I was looking for that one, I also saw this Instant Lift Brow Pencil from e.l.f. and it got really good reviews. So today we're going to try this. But generally, I like to go in with a brow gel first, and usually I use a tinted one, and kind of fill them in, and then I just use the pencil where I need to. So for today, I'm using the Ulta Beauty Brow Tint in the shade Light. I've used the Benefit Brow Wiz before, and it's great. This is just much, much cheaper, and it does the same thing quite well. So I just start at the base of my eyebrow. I kind of brush upwards. If you have really thin eyebrows, you can take the product backwards, and then it helps to really get it in there as well. Generally, this wand comes out with a little too much on it, so I try to wipe it off. Okay. So generally, I'll let that set for a minute, and then I'll go in with my eyebrow pencil and fill in areas that aren't quite symmetrical or areas that are more thin than others. Your eyebrows will never look perfectly identical unless they're microbladed, which I'm jealous because I would love to get mine microbladed. I usually brush them out a little bit, get some of the excess tint out of there. And I'll pencil them in. So first thoughts, this pencil isn't quite as fine of a tip as the L'Oreal is that I love, but It has really good, it's got decent pigment. And then kind of brush out where you did that so it kind of works it in. And I'm just using short little light strokes. So like I said, I usually do mascara last, just because I don't want to mess it up when I start doing any contouring or anything like that. So for contour, I'm going to be using my favorite Tartiste Pro Glow. And I generally use the shade Sculpt. And I'm going to go into this with a Real Techniques sculpting brush. I love Real Techniques brushes. You can find these at Ulta. Just going to pick up a little bit of that. And you're going to go from the ear, just kind of into that cheekbone. Make your fishy face if you have trouble finding it. And I'm just patting it in there. And as I mentioned earlier, if you want more of a, I don't want to say harsh, but not as subtle of a contour, do this right after your foundation before you apply your setting powder, and it'll be even more noticeable. If I'm going out or if I'm doing pretty serious makeup, that's what I generally do. And I'm also going to use this shade with kind of a smaller fluffy brush and kind of apply it around the edges of my face. Across my nose. And then I'm gonna hit my non-existent jawline. Unfortunately, it runs in my family. I do not have a very strong chin and or jawline, and that's just the nature of the beast. I'm gonna use that brush to fluff out your contour from a minute ago. Okay. So since my foundation is a little bit light, I'm going to wear some bronzer, and I'm going to be using the Hoola bronzer from Benefit. I'm just going to use that same fluffy brush. Apply this on my cheekbones, across my nose, generally anywhere on my face that would normally get sun. Okay. So I always wear blush. I think blush is a necessity in makeup. So today I'm going to be using a combination of two different shades. This is the Milani Romantic Rose, and this is a blush from Ulta. And this is an Ulta Beauty blush brush. You can apply blush with your fingers if you want a more precise application. And you're just going to tap it right into the apple of the cheek. And you want to bring it up a little bit up the cheekbone, but not too much. You want blush primarily where you smile. And I'm going to add this bolt on top. This is a real pretty rosy color, but it is a little bit shimmery, so I don't usually start with this one. The Milani has no shimmer. And then if there's anything about your face that you want to further enhance, now is the time to do it. So I'm just going to go in just a little bit more with some more of that Sculpt. And hit that underneath my cheekbones. One more time. And make sure you take it down the sides of your face as well. And then if you're feeling really ambitious, you can contour your nose. And so this is a buffing concealer brush. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of that Sculpt color on here. Kind of contour the bridge of my nose. Okay, so now we're ready for one of the last steps. I am going to apply lipstick as well, but I'm on to mascara. And I take mascara extremely seriously. If I had one beauty product to last me for the rest of my life, it would be mascara. So I'm going to use a combination of a mascara and a primer. So the primer I'm using is the Blush Paradise from L'Oreal, and then I'm going to go on top of that with my favorite Pure Fully Charged mascara. And since I'm at the end of my lash lift, I am going to curl my lashes. Now, is this step necessary? Absolutely not. But it can make a huge difference in how your lashes look. But if you get a lash lift performed, then you don't have to do it anymore. So I'm going to go in with the L'Oreal, and it is a pale, pale pink. Any lash primer is going to be a white color, don't be scared. So I'm just going to start at the base, kind of wiggle it up. And if you like to buy drugstore mascara, the L'Oreal Lash Paradise is by far my favorite. I love the brush, I like the formula, I like that it lengthens while volumizing. That's generally something I look for in a mascara. My eyelashes on a whole are by no means outstanding, so. Okay, so then you're going to want to let that sit for about 30 seconds before you go in with your mascara. And I do find it helps when you're applying mascara if you also come from the top down, just to make sure you coat every tip of the lash and then go back up the other direction. And I did get a little bit of primer on my eyelid, but that's okay, we're gonna let that dry. And then I'll clean it up when I'm done. Okay, so one coat done, and I generally do two. Okay, so the uppers are done. And now for the lowers. If you like to wear a little bit of color underneath that, on that lower lash line, now is when I would generally apply that. I never wear eyeliner on my lower lash line. It makes my eyes look smaller. But I will smudge in a bit of color just for a little bit of emphasis. Okay, now we're ready for mascara. So I'm just kind of wiggling, kind of pumping it on there. Mascara is done. So my whole face is done, except my lips. So today I'm just going to put on one of my favorite pinks, and this shade generally works for everybody, and it's the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk, which you can get at Sephora, and it also comes with the lip liner. So I'm going to be using both. So for the liner, I'm going to apply it just slightly outside the line of my lips and on my upper lip to make it look a little bit bigger. And instead of emphasizing my Cupid's bow, I'm going to take it more kind of straight across. And then I generally color in just mid. Just because I don't want a really harsh line where my lip liner was applied. This shade is just kind of a rosy neutral, but it works for pretty much everything. Perfect. So that will dry to kind of more of a matte finish. If you want more of a shimmer or a gloss, you can always put a gloss on top of it. So for today, just to gloss it up a bit, I think I'm going to use some of my Milani Keep It Full Plumper. Just kind of apply that in the middle. And it helps that lower lip look a little bit more pouty. So there you have it. That's how I do my general face. Obviously certain steps can be eliminated. Do you have to contour your face? Absolutely not. Do I like to? Sure, but I don't do it every day. So like I said, this is not what I apply every single day to go to work. I usually keep it to about 10 minutes or under. And this generally from start to finish when I'm not talking takes me about 20 to 30 minutes. But some days go easier than others. If you have any spots that need cleaned up, I just forgot that I had just a little fleck of mascara primer that made it on my eyelid. And like I said, you generally want to let anything on your lids dry before you try to take it off. Then just go on with a Q-tip and you'll be able to brush it off without smudging off any of your eyeshadow. So there you have it. Hopefully you guys find this helpful. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below here on YouTube, or you can also leave them on the blog post that I'll have this linked to. I will link up all the products that I used today. These are all generally my favorites. This is what I reach for every single day. But I'm always constantly trying new things, so I will have an updated version of this, I'm sure, shortly. But anyways, thank you for watching.